Hey, this is Matt from Akai Professional at the Gear4music studios. Today, we're going to be checking out MPC Beats, a fully featured music production software that ships with the MPK Mini Mark III. So MPC Beats is a free download. Today we're going to be using it with the MPK Mini Mark III. You can also use it with a host of other MIDI controllers as well. So let's take a look how we get set up. Okay, so here we are in our MPC Beats work environment. I have a blank project loaded. The first thing we need to do is head up to the top left here and then go down to help. And let's do our startup wizard. So it says here start by plugging in a MIDI device. We've already got the MPK Mini Mark III plugged in, so we'll hit next. And we'll just make sure we've got Mini 3 select. And if we go down to factory, you can see we also have support for third-party manufacturers, as well as Alesis, M-Audio, and other Akai controllers as well. And we hit next. Now here it's going to ask if you want simple or advanced. Now this is going to relate to what work environment looks like. So let's hit simple. And click next. And click start making beats. So here we are in our blank work environment. So if I just click help icon here, we'll just hide that. So let me talk you through some navigation of MPC Beats. So on the left-hand side here, we have sequence, track, and program. Now a sequence in MPC terminology is essentially a section of your song. So it could be verse, chorus, bridge, etc. A section, B section, that kind of thing. And if I click on the down arrow here, you can see we can add sequences as we go. And then below that we have track. Now a track can be made up of either a drum program, a key group, so a multi-sampled instrument, a plugin. Now MPC Beats ships with tube synth, electric, and bassline for our virtual synths. It can also be a MIDI track, a clip track, so if we're working with loops, or CV gate track. And then below that we have program. Now program is where all of my instruments and my drum kits will be loaded into from the browser. And that's where we pull all of that content out for use on a track. So let's head over to the browser now. If we click on the bottom right here, you can see if we hover the mouse over it, it highlights media browser. Let's click that. Now here's where we can pull in content from our browser. You can see at the top, it's found my MPC expansions. Now I can search program. Now program is typically a drum kit made up of different samples, or I can search individual samples. So if you go down here, you can see I have kick drums, snares, individual samples of synths, keys, that sort of thing. The cool thing in MPC as well is I can filter these down by what particular sound I'm looking for. So if we're on sample here, I could say, melodic, R&B, or I could search lo-fi, drum, FX, or percussion sound. So what we're going to do here is click on my lo-fi expansion, and then we are going to choose program and kit. So if I want to audition any of these kits, I simply highlight and come down to my play icon. Now if I double click on my ADSR bedroom kit, what happens then is the kit is loaded into my program. So if I click here and click lo-fi, and you can see the pads have been populated with samples, so I can now play on the pads on the MPK Mini. Okay, so let's take a look at some software instruments now. To do this, I'm going to create a brand new track. So let's click the drop-down menu and check unused here. So now we're in a new track. So now let's add a software instrument to our song. If I click on the plugin here, you'll see my program plugin is on tube synth. Now if I highlight this, you can see I have a choice of either electric or bassline. Bassline is our analog bass synth, and with electric we have lots of vintage vibes like Fender Rhodes and things like that. So I'm going to keep this on tube synth, and I can browse my presets by clicking the drop-down list, and they are sorted by lead, synth, pluck, pad, bass. So if I hit pad and then go to motive pad, I can play that using the MPK. Now to view the plugin GUI, I simply hit the Program Edit button at the top, and if I scroll over here, you can see I now have full access to all my parameters on my plugin instrument. Now, of course, the MPK Mini Mark III automatically maps to certain parameters within MPC Beats. So we'll take a look at the software. If I trigger the synth, I can manipulate the parameters using the rotaries on the MPK Mini. And I can also use these cue links to change any other information within my MPC Beats project. If I head back to my home screen, you see this cue link mode now says screen. And if I move any of these, you can see I have program level, playhead, my horizontal scroll, my horizontal zoom. And I can also adjust my timing correct off and on, my time division, my swing amount, and my time correct strength. But of course, these can be manually mapped in learn mode as well. So let's load in another track now. Let's hit 3 unused, and let's load in another plugin. So this time we're going to go with bassline. And if I hit my program edit, you can see there our full plugin GUI. And let's add in another one. Let's go to track 4. And this time we're going to load in an instance of electric. And again, there you can see the full plugin GUI. So let's look at a few more navigation options within MPC Beats. So I'm in my main mode here. Now if I go across to track view, you can see I have a full track strip here, and that's showing me my lo-fi drums and my 3 plugins. So here I can mute, solo, and record arm. If I head over to here, this is my program edit, which we've already covered. And then finally, we have channel mixer. And to see my individual levels within a program, I simply hit the drop-down menu, and I'll head to pad mixer. So for any other help on MPC Beats workflows, if I come to my help icon here and I hit watch videos, this will take you to our full list of tutorial videos. So now let's start making a track in MPC Beats. The first thing I've done here is switch to advanced workthrough. If I come to the main toolbar here and then press view, I can switch back to simple and then come back up and then switch workspace back to advanced. So I loaded a drum kit, some instances of electric, bassline and tube synth, and an audio track as well. So let's start building up some ideas. So to get recording in MPC Beats, we have our main transfer here, record, record overdub, and then our play and stop. And at the top here, we can set our swing value, metronome on and off, and our BPM. So I'm going to start recording a beat using the pads on the MPK Mini. So to start recording, let's hit record and play. Now I've set a 2-bar loop here, so I can keep overdubbing ideas. So now I've got our drum beat down. If you want to go and fine tune any MIDI events, we can simply highlight and use our erase tool, or we can draw more events in manually with our pencil. And then use the erase tool to undo them. So now I'm going to head to track 1, where I have an instance of tube synth. And again, using the same 2-bar loop, I'm going to start building up some more ideas. So we go back into record arm mode, hit record. So next, let's head down to track 3. Now on track 3, I have my bass. So I'm going to take this down a few octaves. So now to record that in. So we've been using the MPK Mini to play in drum sounds and single notes using the keys. MPC Beats also has a feature called Pad Perform, which means we can perform whole chords using just the pads. If I head down to my instance of electric, which is on track 5, you'll see in my workspace here, there's an option called Pad Perform. Now in Pad Perform, I can click on type, switch this back to chromatic, and determine my root note and scale. But if I go back to chords now, I've got this set up to be in D minor, but of course we can change our scale type. So we can go to pentatonic minor. So let's scroll through a few more. We've got our major. And if we go back to major, we've then got things like whole tone and Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, and all the modes. So I'm going to set this to natural minor. So using Pad Perform now, let's play in some ideas just using the pads on the MPK. So again, we'll go back into record mode, hit play. So using the advanced workflow view, we can actually have quicker access to our effects section. Now let's say I want to add a slightly more lo-fi vibe to the electric piano. If I come over to my track strip here, so I already have an instance of air delay and a high pass filter. Now if I click on the space below, I can add up to 4 per channel on MPC Beats. And these can be vintage effects such as SP1200 emulation, delays, reverbs, EQs, compressors, that kind of thing. So let's double click our air delay. Let's solo this track now. And I'm going to add my delay in. And now I'm going to add my filter in. I can also add effects to individual drum samples within the drum program. If I click back onto my drum track, which is track 2, and then click on my pad mixer, you see I now have all of my samples on my drum track. And you can see I have an insert section at the top of each sample. So what I can do now is I can click on my snare, and let's click the empty space, and let's put a reverb on this snare. So let's go with reverb medium. And I can cycle through presets at the top. Okay, so now let's take a look at audio editing in MPC Beats. For this, I'm going to pull in some content from my sample library here. I've already loaded it in, the ADSR bed pad sample. So if we take a listen. So there's a few different ways I can chop up this sample. If I head back to my main mode, I can drag this sample onto my timeline. And then I can use my erase and cut tool to chop the sample up. Or I can head to my sample edit and I can do some classic MPC sample manipulation. So where you have trim, chop and program in the bottom left here, I can click chop and then I'll have different access to different chop algorithms. So we have manual, threshold, regions and BPM. So with manual, I can go in and manually insert with the mouse where I want to chop. But if I click regions, what MPC Beats has done, it's assigned all the chops for me. So if you want to create a new program with those chops and add effects and manipulate it even further, let's go with regions and keep it to the 16 chops. And then underneath here, we can convert to a brand new program. We press do it. Now if I go back to my track here and go to program, so you've now got ADSR bed pads chop. Now, of course, we can fine-tune those chops even more. If I head into my waveforms, I can move my chops around and tighten them up using the mouse. And then I can bounce it out to another new drum program. And you can also manipulate audio with warping as well in MPC Beats. If I head over to my browser here, and I'm going to drag in the lo-fi loop on an audio track. Let's move it just forward here. If I click warp, I can now stretch this sample around using the BPM. And again, this is all happening non-destructively. So I can push the tempo again. And stretch it out even further now. MPC Beats can also be used as a software instrument inside your DAW, such as Logic, Cubase or Pro Tools. Here, we're going to set it up in Logic Pro. So I've got a blank template, and let's go with software instrument, and make sure MPC Beats is checked. Press create. And if I come to my track inspector here, double click, you can see we now have the full MPC Beats GUI. So let's throw in a lo-fi kit. So I can now instantiate MPC Beats in my Logic Pro session. So that's a quick look at some of the navigation and workflows within the software. MPC Beats is a free download, so head over to the Akai Professional website to find out more. For more information on the MPK Mini Mark III or any other Akai products, head over to the Gear4music website.